Enterprises have huge networks and they differ from each other. What are the common pain points that these businesses have?
Well, this is, I refer to this picture here because it's a simplified drawing of a very complicated network. This looks fairly complex, and yet the networks themselves are even more so. But this is a very typical kind of a deployment that a large business might have. There's multiple locations. There might be a head office, a series of branch offices, perhaps some small offices that are connected. They've got multiple networks. They've got a data network of some kind. They've got internet connections. They've got voice connections. So there's a whole lot of connectivity there, a whole lot of infrastructure there, a whole lot of management there, and not a heck of a lot of synergy among them. That causes problems, right? People have to spend an awful lot of time operating this separate networks.
The other thing you don't see on here at all are the home offices and the mobile workers. Right. So they're off, they're not even in here. They're off up here and around here. But you still want them to be connected and to have all of the same telephony and communications capabilities as their office counterparts.
Right. So it drives, kind of pain in terms of the amount of management and perhaps inefficiency, as well as cost. Right. You're paying for an awful lot of things here. That there may be better ways to structure.
And it seems almost debilitating for them to move forward with their network and to expand into future technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. There needs to be, in order to get there needs to be a very structured way to do it, and a very deliberate way to kind of go through the steps, so that you're actually able to upgrade a network like this to something simpler, more efficient, in a very controlled way and a low-risk way. Right? You don't want to be risking your business while you do something like that.
Sure.
So we hear a lot about convergence being a way of simplifying some of this. How do larger enterprise businesses take advantage of it?
Well, a couple of different steps. In this picture, for example, this is a customer that operates a data network, and many users have deployed that to interconnect their sites. With technology advancements and service advancements over the years, this has improved, and these have become more sophisticated with better capabilities. So I'll just illustrate it a little bit here. Many of these data networks are actually being upgraded to an IPVPN network. And that's significant because this is a network that's capable of supporting and carrying many different kinds of traffic, keeping them separate and controlling the quality and the characteristics of that traffic. So by deploying an IPVPN network, there's greater speed, generally better cost efficiency. This also forms a basis to be able to start running many more applications. So SIP trunking is a way of utilizing that network to run your voice, right? SIP trunking connects you to the public switch telephone network, but instead of doing it here and here and here and in all these different locations, you run it over your data network. So now all of these PBXs and users can access the PSTN via this network. What does that allow you to do? You can get rid of a lot of cost and a lot of connections that you don't need anymore, like that one, and this one.
So in essence, you're removing all of the separate PSTN connections into one that's via the IPVPN.
Absolutely. Huge efficiency gain because you're paying for many accesses here for a single service. Now you're utilizing that data network, IPVPN network, for multiple services and sharing the access.
Oh, okay. What kind of, things should bigger businesses look at when they're looking at convergence? Do they need to change their MPLS networks at all or think about different equipment?
Well, they probably do, at least to some degree.
Okay.
And they need to look at those investments as not just a way to get cost savings, but also as a way to get more value out of that network. Right?
Absolutely. That's sort of the other part of the equation. There's the cost and the efficiency. But at the same time, these businesses and these users are looking at ways to become more productive. And that generally gets into an exploration of unified communications. How can you incorporate mobile workers? How can you incorporate presence and messaging into your communication system in a coherent way and in a common way across all of those users wherever they may be located? So it does suggest then that that user needs to talk with some knowledgeable people to sort of say, what do I need to do here in order to be able to expand those capabilities? And the network, utilizing SIP trunking and the IPVPN, can facilitate that, can help it to happen.
What I'm hearing is that it not only provides greater performance, it allows an individual and an organization as a whole to save money, but it also allows the flexibility for a business to grow beyond what they're already today thinking about into the future.
Absolutely. We've worked with a number of different organizations that have done that very thing. And I'll just give you a little bit of an example. Somebody who has, say, 20 locations around the country used to have 20 of these little boxes, one situated in each location. And as they deployed this kind of a network and actually implemented SIP trunking and looked at their unified communication solutions, they consolidated that network into actually not one but two redundant boxes, located them in a data center environment. So at the end of it, they had a master telephone switch that was serving all their locations. And all that they ever had to put at the branch and small offices was just a router and some phones. Very easy to be able to then extend into a new location or even attach teleworkers into that kind of a configuration. So it really improved that flexibility.
So what other kind of benefits are businesses experiencing by going into a converged network?
Well, there was one other piece. It's not necessarily a characteristic of SIP trunking itself, but utilizing the same network and the same concept, these internet connections can actually also be provided over that same IPVPN network. So we've got some users that have begun to combine everything, right? So imagine being able to reduce the number of internet connections that you have as well. Again, that leverages that network even more.
And the other thing I think for large organizations especially they need to be paying attention to is, what am I going to do at a given local site? Right. So if I'm in a particular region, what is that internet connectivity actually like? It's not necessarily right for every location in the world. So you do need to take a look at all your different sites, but this gives you the flexibility, the ability to do that, to kind of mix and match how you set things up.
So as businesses are deploying SIP trunking, what are their steps that they need to take? Because clearly their networks at the starting point is, complex and cumbersome, and how do they get beyond that step?
Careful planning is very, very important. And being able to sit down and kind of map out the steps to eventually move into a combined architecture such as this is very, very important. And, again, nobody wants to jeopardize that critical phone service or the data service for that matter as well. So a step at a time, cutting over sites and having a well-developed plan to do that. And, they need to work with a provider and people that can help make that happen. It's very, very important. I would say also from a UC, Unified Communications and SIP point of view, somebody who can actually help with the design, show the alternatives, right? And has done interoperation testing and the like, has the background to be able to step a customer through that process in a very low-risk way is very, very important.
Can you talk a little bit more about security and class of service?
Sure. So everybody who might have spoken over a service like Skype, for example, or internet-based services may have heard, sometimes your voice gets clipped. It's very important to have voice communications quality of service in place. You want your business to be able to talk on the phone and have the same experience that they would have talking over the regular telephone network. So quality of service, being able to actually take that voice data and make sure that it's got priority in the network is very important. So again, IPVPN networks that do that are the suitable ones to actually use. Similarly, in security, yes, you also want to be sure that because you're combining your voice with your data, you've got appropriate security measures in place. IPVPN is very powerful in that sense, in that it's like a private virtual network that a sophisticated operator would use. But also, even if you choose to make your voice connection over an internet connection, then you do also have to make sure from a firewall policy point of view and an edge security point of view that you got the right steps in place to protect your network from the internet.
And Grant mentioned redundancy earlier, and that is another important point, right? So the way we've sort of simplified this is, we've got this kind of one connection, but any large business is going to have some kind of redundant setup. Although we do find sometimes that they're able to use those secondary networks and lines for other purposes in the background, so they're not just sitting there doing nothing.
Right.
But they do serve as a failover.
Yeah.
So how are businesses adopting this, and what are the adoption rates today?
So we're seeing at Frost & Sullivan, our research shows double-digit growth. It's very robust right now. This has been around for a while. It's not, brand new technology, but that's a good thing for companies that are starting to adopt it, right? Because a lot of the kinks have been taken out now. It's very reliable, very secure. And so what we're finding is in 2010 there were about 7 million deployments, and we're expecting that to grow to closer to 60 million by 2017. So that's very significant growth.
Strong growth.
Yeah.
We're also seeing just in Canada double-digit growth as well in the adoption of SIP trunking more and more, all the way from large enterprises that are looking to develop deploy it on networks like this, right through mid-size and smaller businesses as well.
How do businesses, start to look at SIP trunking, and what are the things that they should look at from a service provider?
So from a service provider, again, making sure that you sit down with somebody who can take you through the steps, right, and planning it out. Somebody who has good solutions for quality of service and security that we've talked about, and somebody who's got a pretty extensive interoperability program or capability. So you're de-risking and you're finding somebody who can help you. You're going to be able to connect with confidence. You're going to be able to have the quality that you need. You're going to have the security that you need. Right? And then, this is also very often a broader discussion. We've talked about IPVPN, we've talked about unified communications, and we've talked about SIP trunking. So you very often find yourself having a discussion about all of it, as opposed to talking just to a service provider, let's say, about SIP trunking alone, right? So it's a comprehensive discussion, right? And you need to talk to somebody who's knowledgeable in all those areas.